Welcome to Authentic Living with Roxanne on Global Voice Radio. Join Roxanne Derhodge and her thought-provoking conversations, the catalyst to live your life to the fullest.
Hi everyone, it's Roxanne Derhodge. How are you? Thanks for tuning in again for Authentic Living with Roxanne. So today I have a very, very special guest, Scott Armstrong. I just met Scott not too long ago, and in Ottawa, like, you know, how long ago? Well, that's not even a month ago. Mm-hmm. And Scott brings a unique approach to life that I thought would be interesting for most of us, because I think a lot of us can relate to this. And Scott started his career in commercial banking a little ways back. And then 3 years later, he started to a rehab for exotic animals. And that was a dream that he had, and he created it 3 years later. His lifelong dream came through, which was like, you know, being with jaguars and, you know, kind of hanging out with wolves. I don't know how many people can say they've done that. And just playing in the snow with tigers. It sounds kind of scary, but wow, fascinating. And what you said in your bio is that you wanted to help other people experience the same type of things. And I think that's a fascinating thing, because I know it within my life, you kind of do what's expected, and sometimes you kind of get veered off. So your present adventure is the name of your business is Limitless Adventures. And what you do is you work with individuals and companies to help them create and grow the space within themselves. So I'm sure I'm not doing your bio justice, but it's very fascinating what you've done, going from, you know, I kind of think of us in Toronto, and, you know, to go from Bay Street to kind of hanging out with these exotic animals. What a big shift. So thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So what's it like in BC?
What's it like in BC today, or in general?
Yes. What's it like today in BC?
Well, we're on our 400th day of rain, and tomorrow night they're calling for snowmageddon, up to 2 meters of snow.
Wow.
No, 2 meters of snow in 24 hours or 48 hours up in the mountains. So we're hunkering down. Yeah.
Wow, goodness. And we're still at -10 here, which is, we're trying to kind of keep it all together, because in Southern Ontario, we're not so accustomed here in Niagara to that. But, you know, people are getting out and about. So Scott, I'm fascinated with what you do, like, and the fact that you went from such a space and you created this shift in this dream within 3 years. So tell me more about what happened for you and how you kind of started to approach things to create this dream for yourself.
I was at university, like many folks, and you get channeled in by the academics of the day, the thought processes of the day. Went to York University, highly regarded business school there, went on to Bay Street, and soon found out that when I was interviewing entrepreneurs, I was on the wrong side of the table. I was the entrepreneur, not the banker. And so within a short period of time, I left, did some bartending up in Whistler, which is what everybody who's just spent $30,000 on an education should do. And, you know, much to my family and chagrin, and then saved some money, went to Hawaii, and said, if I could do anything at all, and at that point I believed I could, and I still do. I said, I've always wanted to work with wildlife, and I came back to your neck of the woods in Toronto, and started looking for jobs that would involve me working with wildlife, and there was a grand sum of 0 jobs for that. So started doing volunteer work. So now I'm paying debt off, you know, $30,000 worth of debt on a volunteer job. And I created one with an endangered animal sanctuary in downtown Toronto. For those who are in Toronto, think of Bayview Avenue and Eglinton Avenue. There was 12 exotic cats there on Millwood Crescent. And I did some volunteer fundraising work there. And that led me to saying, you know what, I think I can do this. And I approached an accredited zoo in Ontario, and they became my healthcare facility. And we started taking in abandoned exotic pets, zoo surplus animals, circus animals, all those kinds of animals that have no place to go when their original owners don't want. And we raised funds for them and had a farm up near Peterborough, Ontario, a 5-acre farm, and did rehab and release work for them. So when you said, playing with a Siberian tiger in the snow, yes. Swimming underwater with a jaguar, yes. Running with a pack of wolves, yes. It was sort of like, I remember thinking when I was 28 years old, and I've been doing this for a year or two, if the Lord were to come down and strike me dead now, somehow I was okay with that. And that seems very weird to be recanting that to you today, but I just said life had been so amazing for me that I did not think I deserved anything else. And this was despite the fact that my mortgage was $1,400 and my first month revenue with the business was $500. And I had to go back and start bartending again just to make ends meet. So that instilled in me very early the idea that, dreams and passions don't come easy. We in society are told to, take a lot of the predictable stuff. We become risk averse in some ways. But if you stick with something long, I remember meeting Richard Branson at YVR here 3 years ago when they launched Virgin Airlines. And I managed to have about 15 seconds with him. And I said, listen, I work with entrepreneurs and business owners. One piece of advice, what would you give? And he said, most people lose it because they don't have sustained focus. Lots of great ideas, but they don't execute on it. And that just resonated with me a whole heap, because that's where most people lose it. When the going gets tough, society says you should be making 100,000, 150,000. You should have the cars, you should have the vacations. And when you don't, you hold a society's opinion of you higher often than what you hold for yourself. So I got to work with Jane Goodall with the Chimps and Gombe,
Wow.
David Suzuki, Al Oming with Cheetahs up in Edmonton with wolves. So I met all kinds of incredible people. And when I went to university, my biology, my veterinary skills, how many were? Nada. I was a marketer. So I was one of those ones who broke free from whatever I was originally crafted to be, and have continued to follow that track since then.
So you've always loved animals, I'm going to assume. Did you, when you were really young, were you really connected? And exotic, okay, I'm from Trinidad. So okay, I see exotic birds and stuff up here. You're talking about things from all over the world. Did you always have an affinity to exotic animals, or was it just all animals?
It was all animals. And, I was the guy who, right where you were when Marineland was in vogue back in the 80s, I applied to be one of the trainers there before we realized that was not the right thing to do. So I would catch garter snakes everywhere I went. I remember walking around bear dumps, up in cottage country and looking for bears, much to my parents' chagrin. I'm lucky to be alive, in a lot of ways for that. But the wildlife component, the nature component, yeah, it's always been there. And if I'd had good grades in university, by the way, I probably would have, the 90s, I would have gone to vet school. I just am not that smart. I wasn't that smart to do that. So,
you brought up a really, I, like you, kind of took the path. I decided, I don't think I can go, I don't like sciences. I don't like math, so I don't want accounting. I don't think I like drawing, so I don't want to be an engineer. Maybe law, I don't know. So I think I like to talk to people, right? And I hoped to God that there would be something. So I decided really early that I wanted to be a talker, which I didn't realize there was a field that you could do that. So somewhere in there, you decided, like you said, when most of us are like entrepreneurs, I know you're an entrepreneur, I am, we step into things where there's so much, I often say the fear is so high, right? Like you have the mortgages and you have to send the kids to school and you got to buy all that stuff, to be able to just even sustain a life. And you make $500 and then your mortgage is $1,400. Something in you had to have reshifted to be able to, for you to stay the course. Because a lot of people get scared. They do it for, you say, 6 months. They go kind of into the credit line and then they jump ship.
Yeah. So, I'd ask you this, what's the cost of not doing it? What's the cost of having a career for 20 or 30 years where you're living for that final pensionable day? All the things that are lost. And that's where you have to either go with societal norms. And a lot of entrepreneurs in your family may be this way too, Roxanne, is, if you're from an entrepreneurial family, chances are you will pursue that. You'll understand what it takes to make that happen. Mm-hmm. We've got one of the guys out here who founded EA Electronic Arts, who on his off time still works with his parents' Chinese food restaurant delivering food. The guy is a multi-millionaire. I won't say billionaire because I don't know that for the fact, but they understand what it takes to make something happen. So the opportunity cost of actually taking a job that you don't want to go into. I mean, with the animals and wildlife, I was doing shows. I'd get up at 5 a.m. I'd feed, I'd drive 2 hours to Toronto, do 4 hours of shows, get home at 7 at night and repeat. I loved it. I got paid for it along the way. And I think if you can find something that you love, people love to follow passion, and that's how you and I connected. I remember reading your book. I remember listening to your radio show, and I said, I would like to somehow work with you in the future. So I think if you put passion out there, you attract in the universe to avoid.
I think you're right. As you're younger, and I know you have kids, I have a son. You look at them and they're so inquisitive and they're natural and, the things that they come up with. I remember once my son had some boys, they were about 8 or 9 years old, and I was upstairs and I think I was reading and I fell asleep and I got a text that says, "Come downstairs now." And when I had gone to the basement, they had found everything that they could find. And there was levers and there was ramps and all this stuff. The croquet set was set up, and I was sitting there going, and I wrote a piece on it because I thought, to channel that, and oftentimes you're right, as adults we lose that, because I looked at them and I thought, how did you guys come up with this? And they had created this terrain that they were playing with kind of all night, into the evening, and that mind is just so special. But as adults, you're right, we kind of, we go to university, we meet the partner, we have the 2.5 children, you buy the house on the cul-de-sac where I live now, and you take, maybe one vacation every 5 years, and you save for retirement, and, you hear, and I can't wait till I retire. That seems to be the cycle that people do over and over again. So in my business, I try to get people connected with what's your authenticity about? What is that voice deep down inside that tells you that you're unique? So tell me a little bit more with your business, which sounds really spicy compared to mine. How do you get people connected? Like, how do you use physical? What do you do to help people connect?
So there's two aspects to the business, and you can direct me which one. I do work with individuals to do that, and I also work with companies, and they're sort of two different skill sets. So point me in a direction, and I'll go down that lane.
Let's start with individuals, because I'm curious because I'm going to assume probably the people are listening are probably more individuals. So let's start there.
Okay. So with an individual, I usually talk, my person is usually 40 plus. They're often sort of at a loss. People don't seek any kind of change or help until they actually feel some significant pain. So that's usually where we get to. And I usually meet a lot of our folks when we go on a snowshoe outing, or we do one of our Tough Mudders, or we do some other crazy event. And you start to see them going, hey, I'm with the group. I haven't done this for 20 years. I'm having a really good time. What's next? So momentum. That's really what the start is. I do believe in the power of the posse, and that when we take a look at who we are, we're often the average of the 5 people we hang around with the most. And we help them change their posse a little bit. They get out with folks who aren't necessarily their folks from their normal community, their culture, or their work, or anything like that. And once they get started, often then it's they're on their own. They know what they can do, and they will often look for new work. They're just realizing that there's all kinds of things that are possible for them. But what we really get into when we're talking, and it's a lot of casual conversation as we're climbing the mountain, and I think we're going snowshoeing on Sunday in a snowmageddon kind of thing. It'll be sort of like, man, I didn't think I can do this. I mean, we had one guy, 62, weighed 270 pounds, and he trained for a Tough Mudder. He got down to 230, which was a lot of weight off, but he was still he was a brick. He was just a brick. And he came and did the 19 kilometers with us. And we support each other. We have this thing that no person gets left behind. And he continued on after that. He's done 4 Tough Mudders since then. He's down to 180 pounds.
Wow.
Left his work, retired, and started his passion business, which happens to be bicycles. He's always loved cycling. So he's cycling around the world. He's doing tours and all those kinds of things. We have folks who access their community element, their charity element. They've always said they're too busy to help out. So all of a sudden, what may be the kernel was started, is helping out on the Lower East Side here in Vancouver, handing out lunches on a Sunday afternoon. And all of a sudden that makes them feel alive, and that gives them the possibility of going forward. So it's sometimes physical, and sometimes it is, what they're thinking is possible in their lives. It's intellectual. And then it often goes to career. They're going, you know what? I'm really not happy with what I'm doing. I don't want the steady decline of health over 30 years so that I end up with bad hips and knees and, on a cane by the time I'm 70. And, then it gets into diet and health. So can I call it a circle? And people enter at different points of the circle, and we go from there.
So kind of based on, and I like you said, you read my book, it took me making massive change based on a significant relationship ending. And that's oftentimes what happens is with people that I see when I consult with them, there's a crisis sometimes. And sometimes they need not get to a crisis to be able to make change. It could be, you're right, it may be that they come and they try this tough mother and they can't believe that it's possible, that like this man that you're talking about, and that probably changes how he thinks ultimately, because now he's so connected to himself and then connected to how he feels, and then now probably thinks, wow, anything is possible. So is that what you find? Do you find that some people come and they go, well, I know, Scott, this is already kind of nice, but I just turned 52 2 days ago. And to hear people say, well, I'm 50, so therefore I should not, I cannot, I need to slow down,
That's verbal cancer. I believe that's verbal cancer for a lot of people. As soon as you speak something into your life, your body, on a very subconscious level responds that. And that's not my opinion. That's sort of science behind that. Whatever you speak, your body has that physiological reaction to that. So very cautious about, what you say in your life. I'm 56 now. I'm still playing competitive volleyball with folks who are 25 years younger than I am. It's not that I'm 6 foot tall. I'm not 6 foot tall. It's not that I'm in great shape. I just tell my body that that's what I want to do. So there's a switch. When you're in your 20s, your body leads you. It has so much energy, you often don't know what to do with it. You get to, our area of age, and all of a sudden, if you don't take command of your own ship, your body's going to start shutting itself down. You have to become that stronger captain to tell your body and your mind what it's going to do. So this is the only muscle, or the most important muscle that you have here, to what that self-talk is that you have inside your head, and what you're going to tell your body you're going to command from it. I mean, we still have folks, one of our guys is 77 who's still playing competitive volleyball, and nothing special about him athletic wise. He wasn't an Olympian or anything like that. He's just decided that that's what he's going to do. So I think for a lot of us, we just have to decide what we're going to do. And when you feel sore in the morning, when you get up, when you feel tired, who's going to win? Who do you let win? Do you push the snooze button? Do you ignore physical activity because, oh man, it's physical activity? Well, the opportunity cost of doing that, when you're 70 and 80, and we have, parents who might be a little bit older than that, but we've seen friends who are 60, but acting like they're 80.
And you're so right? Because you get that mental when, someone said to me, so are you going to start not counting birthdays? And I said, no, why would I not count my birthday? I mean, it's a great day. I thank my mom and dad for having me and putting up with me. And then I enjoy and I celebrate. I was in Trinidad, so I had a big celebration for my birthday. But it's the power of, I have a friend, and she's a dear friend, and she's a personal trainer. And she's my person that kind of makes me think that anything is possible physically. And this is a funny story, but I think I should tell it to you. One day there was a group of us, it's a group of us that work out, and she said, we're going to go for a hike. Now, I should know with this person, and anybody that knows me that has heard this story laughs. She said, let's go on a hike. And one of the girls' husbands drove us to Beamsville. I don't know, you probably don't know Niagara very well, but it's a Bruce Trail. Mm-hmm. The man that was dropping us off looked at me and says, are you sure you're going to do this, Roxanne? I said, oh, absolutely I am, right? We hiked from Beamsville to the St. Catharines Rock Tower. I was hallucinating at the end, I think. My body was, and then I said, it's interesting, right? Now I've hiked for 8.5 hours, and I said to my friends after, they were laughing at me. I said, I know I'm going through all these things. Like, what if I was being chased, or what did people go through that had to walk that long, or those types of things. And then it became a now I can hike for 8.5 hours up and down the Bruce Trail. So you're so very right when you say those things. And then now you realize it's possible. I did that 2 years ago when I was 50.
That's awesome. And what we don't like to do now that we're a little bit older is we don't like to take risk. We want to succeed our ego that's usually in our back pocket, because there's fewer things as we get older of people telling us what to do. We don't have the teachers, the parents necessarily. And all of a sudden, the chance of failing at something for a lot of us really damages that image and ego that we have allowed to be constructed around us, either by family, friends, and ourselves. So we don't play as much anymore. We don't just go, hey, I'll just give it my best shot and whatever happens, happens. That's not good enough anymore. We have to see success, which also I think is a differentiating factor for a lot of folks who have that entrepreneurial mindset. I mean, with your business, are you enjoying the journey?
Well, yes, I am. It's taken me everywhere. Like, I mean, I think of when I met you, 6 weeks ago or so, like I had gone like from New York City to Ottawa, and then I came back home, and then I went to Trinidad, and now I'm planning my year. And it's, you know, it's like a gift every time I open. Yes, I'm like you. I'm like, oh goodness, what am I doing? But then I think, why not? Right? Like, I'm at this point now where I'm recognizing that anything that I'm going to create, some of it will fail. That's normal. But have I learned from certain things? But am I excited about 2018 or the next? Absolutely, because I can't believe what's happened in a short period of time based on me being really true to who I was. So like you, I got a severance package and shifted my life 7 years ago and wrote a book and then started to speak and started to consult, and I never looked back. And every time I kind of thought I was going to go back, the corporate kind of shifted. And it kept saying, no, you're not going there. No, you're not going there. And then I went back to my passion, which was to speak and to train and, you know, consult with different people. So I get what you're saying when you know, following it, even though it's scary, because it has been scary, and I'm on my own also. So you're kind of thinking it's, you know, you don't have the backup for someone else. But guess what? You know, it's been quite the ride. Now, you said that people come to you in different ways. Right? They might come to you. So tell us a little bit more about how people, I'm sure people are listening who are in our 50 group that are maybe having these dilemmas will probably want to know what they might experience and what ways they could connect with you to potentially work with you. So tell me and tell the others what, you know, how they could do that.
Fair enough. Two things, if I can, just before that is, I think an important thing is, how do you define failure? And you mentioned this, and this is right at the kernel of what I do. Failure for me is not to fail. If I'm not pushing myself enough where I stumble and have to grow and have a challenging experience, then I'm living inside this bubble. And I didn't sign up for my life. And I don't know anybody who did, to say, hey, listen, I'm going to strive for a mediocre life. Man, I can't wait to get that mediocrity. Boy, that sounds really good to me. And yet that's what most of us get when we start to say, all I want is, I don't want to fail anymore. I don't want to stretch my boundaries. So, you know, when you say you stumbled and you failed along your entrepreneurship, you know, I would say, no, you actually grew. You succeeded because you are more than you were before you had that failure. And that may sound very minutia oriented, but that is the kernel of the psychology behind that. That if you're willing to try new things and sort of see where they go and evolve from there, then, you know, life opens up to you. If you're going to stay in that one bubble that you always know everything, it's predictable, boy, where does new stuff get in? And isn't that the definition of insanity? You know, if you do the same stuff over and over again and expect a different result. So somewhere you got to get in there. To your question on, you know, people getting into, you wanted people, how they can get in touch with me?
Yeah. Like how could they, what, do they go to your, like, do you go to your website? Do you do a consultation? What do you do? Or do you go for a run with them? I'm not sure what you do, Scott, but tell me, because I'm curious. Obviously,
I'm such a good self-promoter. Most of my business is working with companies in the same kind of similar mindset. I do have some clients who are, you know, who I work with both personally, and then they take that stuff to their business. But they certainly, can visit my website. You can tell I love to promote myself so much because I'm just dodging around the question. I'm such an authentic guy, my website is scottarmstronglimitless.com. And what we do is we have a phone chat, and just to find out what's going on. I was talking, two of my clients, one of this is a CFL. I created an academy for the players as they retire. And I was talking to a guy yesterday who just got cut by one of the teams in the CFL. He's not coming back. And he's bonded with a guy from the NFL who is playing, and they're starting their own company. So we've been able to help them move into that next thing that's really exciting for them. And on Tuesday, I'm over at the military base in Esquimalt, BC, doing the same thing for veterans as they're retiring. So generally speaking, it's with a conversation, and whether it's a career, education, an internship, entrepreneurship, we talk about that. But we usually get down to the topic of habitudes, which is just, what is your attitude towards what success looks like in your life, and what habits do you have right now that are really helping you? And do you have some habits now that if we just did a couple of degree twists, or turns, could we open up some new opportunities that might really excite you? And so,
so you go into companies too and do it individually or as groups?
Yes. Yeah. So it could be with a board of directors, where we talk about strategic planning, and sometimes you can have boards that are progressive and others that are mired in day-to-day operations, which they shouldn't be as a board. And other times it's a C-suite member. Often, an interesting one was a client in Chicago just the other day called me up and said, listen, we're about to lose a $600,000 account because we can't close the deal. And I asked them what they had done so far to move that deal forward. And I said, so have you talked to them?
Well,
because they were this 30-something thing where everything's done by text and stuff like that. And boy, that wasn't a lot of brain power, but sometimes a fresh, bright light, can provide some different strategies to help bring it across the line. And yeah, we brought it across the line for them. So sometimes it's just a different clarity in your ear that's whispering different things.
Well, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. And this is authenticity is so key, right? Because you can, like you're saying, I don't know if you've had that experience with some people, but they complain and they know what they need to do, but they're just scared. So hopefully by some of the things you've shared today, people will realize, whether it's, like you said, changing your posse. I listened to your podcast, changing your posse, making that shift, going to that meeting where there's nobody that or like you said, going to a meetup, going to, a trail where I'm meeting up with different people. Sometimes you never know when you're going to get that opening that creates a space in you to start to listen to really, what you should be doing.
Yeah. So
thanks so much. And again, and tell them the website again. I know I have to prod you a bit.
That's okay. Scott Armstrong, and that's Scott with 2 T's, scottarmstronglimitless.com. And, with the power of the posse, just to leave a final piece. And when you're talking to people, if you see them talking about positive, progressive things, keep them. If they're the ones who always come up with the problems in life and that's where they end it, there's a pause for thought for you. So thank you very much, Roxanne, for having me on today.
Well, thank you. And so to my viewers, absolutely, I hope if you're at this space, or even if you own a company that's looking for it, that you connect with Scott. I talk about authenticity all the time, about slowing down, listening, but sometimes listening without action, like we talked about, doesn't give you what you're needing to get to. So take care, and we'll talk to you soon. If you need to connect with me, you know where you can be reached. You can reach me at roxannederhodge.com. Take care.
Join Authentic Living with Roxanne every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern on Global Voice Radio.